My name is Tara Carr, and I'm a proud mother of 4 children, ages 12, 10, 8, and 6. I'm a former career U.S. Army officer, and most recently I was Director of Operations at our local Amazon facility in Danbury. I'd like to start by thanking God for the many blessings bestowed upon me and my family and our fine town. I also want to thank the Brookfield Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event tonight and for letting the townspeople have a better idea of who the candidates are for this year's election. For our viewers online, thank you for taking time out of your schedule this evening to tune in since you couldn't be here in person, and we appreciate you learning more about us. It was at St. Joseph's School in Brookfield where I began to build my foundations, and I have very fond memories of my time and relationships I built there through freshman year, also at Brookfield High School. And I also was fortunate enough to have played Brookfield youth sports. I remember when Bonnie Smith was the first selectman of Brookfield, my team had actually made it to the national championships, and Bonnie Smith awarded us with a letter of recognition and a certificate for our achievements. And I want to congratulate the Brookfield Burn. Shout out to the girls for this year and making it to the World Series. Amazing work. And that just goes to show the impression that a first selectman can have on a youth growing up here in Brookfield. I tell you that story because aside from all the issues that you're going to be hearing tonight, the true measure of our elected officials is how they actually interact with the community and how they fit in. Elected officials aren't paid to just sit up in their ivory tower and make edicts and proclamations that affect the town, avoiding interaction with the townspeople. As a mother, a taxpayer, and a concerned citizen, you will always see me out with you, the electorate, because that is what you deserve. So you may be asking yourself, who is this woman and where did she come from? Many of you watching tonight already know my maiden name is Buonaiuto. And in Italian, that means good help. I'm very proud of my heritage, and I say that this name, Buonaiuto, meaning good help, really befits the position of first selectman. I can assure you I am just that. I am good help. I've been helping people my whole life, and I love to help people. I come from very humble beginnings. I was born along the New Milford-Brookfield town line, and I was raised to parents who were hardworking. My father was in the construction industry, and he's known around town for having built some of our landmarks right here in Brookfield, to include St. Marguerite's Church, the clock tower at Gray's Bridge, which is across from Coles, and then, of course, the silver mine warehouse is right here behind the town hall. My parents instilled in me the values of love of country, hard work, bravery, commitment, and compassion. It is a fact that I enlisted out of the Army right out of high school, and I spent the next 25 years in service to our Army. Some may consider that time away from Brookfield as a weakness, but I submit to you that my time away is nothing but a strength. Not only did I learn responsibility, and I moved up the ranks from private to lieutenant colonel, but I also honed and acquired skills like personnel management, conflict resolution, long-range planning, budgeting, negotiations, and I also achieved 2 master's degrees along the way. These are positive traits and characteristics that come from an investment and a lifetime of community service. I'm a leader in both peacetime and combat, and I've got proven experience under pressure. As far as my job post-Army at Amazon, I was hired as a director, and I launched the $150 million facility, hiring over 600 people, delivering 50,000 packages at launch. I was also allowed to form community relations, and I established an enduring relationship with the Women's Center of Greater Danbury, where I personally contributed tens of thousands of dollars to the fine organization that the Women's Center is. So why am I running? To me, Brookfield is no longer recognizable. Every time we turn around, more trees are being cleared to make way for development, and I can promise you that I intend to curb this overdevelopment. Our world has changed and our town has changed, and we need a leader who can relate to the people of our town. Community and strength has given way to divisiveness, where we have neighbors pitted against neighbors, and people are putting their own interests before the town's. I want to bring good governance back to Brookfield by reinvigorating our community spirit. I'm the only candidate on this panel who has school-aged children, so parents, I understand your concerns and your very, very valid struggles at this time. I look forward to addressing all the questions we have here tonight, and thank you again.
Mr. Monteiro, 5 minutes.
Great.
Good evening, Brookfield. My name is Austin Monteiro. I'm running to be Brookfield's next first selectman as an unaffiliated candidate. First, to those watching the live stream on YouTube, thank you for giving us the opportunity to present our platform to you in this debate put on by the Chamber of Commerce tonight. I truly appreciate that. Unfortunately, we have zero capacity in the room tonight. I do wish we could be at full capacity here in this room, and we have pushed hard to be at full capacity in this room tonight. I truly believe I'm the only candidate up here to do that, fighting for the people of Brookfield. It's a shame to me and not fair to the people, and that is whom this debate is really for. It's not for us, it is for the people of Brookfield. We've worked so hard over these past 3 months to increase voter awareness, and we have gotten to a point here in Brookfield where the people want to attend a debate. I think that is a great thing. The most important debate in Brookfield in a long time, and they are being told no for, in my opinion, no apparent reason. To me, yet another example of a continued practice here locally of the government and some local organizations working together to keep ideas and town matters out of the public's purview personally. I'm here fighting for the people of Brookfield. I will continue to do so to end this kind of debacle. I believe the political swamp runs deep here in Brookfield, and we need to drain it, and we have that chance on November 2nd. With that being said, my vision for Brookfield, my vision is simple: to bring a new voice, a presence to Brookfield, to municipal government, and to be the people's first selectman. To bring much more engagement to the public from this office, to bring a voice from the lens of an entrepreneur, a business owner, a commercial real estate sales developer, and a coach. To bring a voice not bound by these traditional tribal party alliances that are tearing us apart. These alliances are causing way too much division and pushing people further to both sides of the spectrum. We need to center our conversation and center it now with transparency, authenticity, with common sense, and with an open mind to diverse ideas. There are some issues that I am traditionally left on. There are some issues I am traditionally right on. So I refer to myself as the aggressively centric candidate, and I think it's necessary now to be aggressively centric to salvage democracy, even here locally in Brookfield. Now is the time, Brookfield. We have that opportunity, November 2nd, to vote for Monteiro. The causation of a vote for me, I guarantee, will bring change, and change is what makes us grow. Change is natural. A vote for me will bring a stronger and tighter-knit community. A vote for me is best for our future, in my opinion. The future is going to move exponentially fast, and faster than any of us has seen before. We need a person in this seat, a first selectman, who is able to adapt to that change. For my background, personally, born and raised here in the greater Danbury area my entire life. My family has deep community roots here dating back over 100 years. Growing up, we did bounce around quite a bit. In my early years, I attended Huckleberry Hill School here in Brookfield and Country Kids right down the road. I know them very well. After second grade, we moved back to Danbury, graduated from Immaculate High School and from Western Connecticut State University. For the past 15 years, I have lived here in Brookfield. I currently live with my longtime girlfriend, whom I'd like to say thank you to right now. Also my family out there watching. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. We live with Heather's two amazing children who I've seen grow up since they were 3 years old. They're in our Brookfield public school system, and I think I'm the only person up here that can say I live currently with two children that are in our Brookfield school system, the high school and Wisconsin. So to tie it up, I've been in the greater Danbury area my entire life. I plan to stay here and fight for the people of Brookfield and fight for Connecticut and not tuck my tail and run when times get hard. Professionally, my background is, again, in entrepreneurship, commercial real estate development. I have started and owned 3 different businesses. I'm also heavily involved in coaching youth athletes, adult athletes, people of many different skill levels. This background, I believe, carries over to serve for public office and for the first selectman seat perfectly. This professional background has granted me the opportunity to learn many valuable skills, including but not limited to business ownership, coaching, leading, community building, which is huge for this seat, networking, relationship building, huge for this seat, financial management, negotiating, buying, selling, zoning law knowledge, huge for this seat, public speaking, and the experience of being a public figure. For those who have not owned a CrossFit gym before, I will tell you, it's definitely being a public figure. So, to wrap it up, I'm here to honorably serve you, all the people of Brookfield. It's time for new leaders to emerge. That time is now. I am fit to serve Thank you, Brookfield. Let's do this.
Mr. Dunn, 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I first would like to thank the Chamber and Scott Ben. If you can have individuals in town, unfortunately, I understand the Chamber made a decision to keep people safe at the highest possible level and decided to have this without participation. Hopefully, a lot of people will be watching on YouTube, and I'm hoping that will happen. My wife and I moved here in 1983. I had gotten a job where I was a Northeast Regional Manager for a company, and my biggest company, that client, was Union Carbide. Union Carbide at that time moved from New York City to Danbury. So I was living in Rye, New York, and was reverse commuting, and so we came up here and we bought a house in 1983. At that time, I was getting my MBA from Fordham University, and after 2.5 years, I got my dream job offer, working on Wall Street. I had a choice to make. Do I move south, closer to Wall Street, or do I stay here? For 35 years, I commuted to Wall Street from Brookfield. And the reason was I love this town. It's a great town. My wife and I grew in this town. Our kids grew in this town. They all went to school here. They're all great kids. We love them most of the time. And so we got involved in the community. I coached baseball for 20 years, including running every single league in town. I coached soccer. I coached lacrosse. I coached an Odyssey of the Mind team, which won 4 state championships. I was also a Boy Scout leader, serving as Scoutmaster, Chairman, Treasurer, bottle washer, everything you needed. Did that for 24 years. So my wife and I started a group, and I don't know if many people will remember this, but 25 years ago, we raised $190,000 to build a new track at the high school, because my wife had been the track coach for 10 years and never had had a home meet. And she said to me, Steve, I want to have a home meet before I retire. She said, would you help us raise some money? And we did. And we did that in 9 months. So we know how to get things done in this town. We know how to invigorate our residents, and we know how to work with our residents. A few years ago, just before Sue Slater and I took office, there were clearly some issues in town. We don't need to go through them. There were problems with management and civility. There were times when the Board of Finance didn't even talk to the Board of Ed. They would just take the Board of Ed budget, look at it, and make changes to it. That has all changed. We have brought civility back to the town government. We have brought transparency back to the town government. You can look at that I can give you my budget for last year. My budget for the town is over 600 pages long. And what it does is it includes every single line item where we're spending money. The schools do a very similar thing. Regarding development in town, I noticed a concern on that. 12 years ago, Fitzgerald and Halliday was hired by the town to do a survey.
I think we need to take a break.
Sure.
Something's going wrong with the audio on it.
The audio, I don't want you to keep,
Oh, it's not working?
well,
It's cutting in and out.
it's
The
going in
camera's,
and out, so
Hmm.
sorry to interrupt you.
yeah, same issue we've had a while.
Somebody's coming after me, huh?
Let me see if I can-
Is it your cable plugged in the back?
The red light's on for me.
Yeah, no, it's not the microphones. One of my cameras keeps flicking in and out, and it cuts the rest of the audio. Is the camera aimed at you, Scott? I might have to
ahead.
unplug the camera and just have the candidate
Okay.
camera.
You can resume?
Give me just 1 second to test it, and you should.
I'll tell you.
We don't need to.
Scott, it's a camera on you, so we have to turn that one off. The candidates are being shot from that camera, so they're fine.
It looks like we should be good. I'll keep an eye on it for a second to see.
Okay,
Good.
ready to go.
Right. Which means
You
we're
ready?
back to 142 is where we
Okay,
stopped.
that's fine.
Go ahead.
12 years ago during Bill Davidson's administration, the town hired a company called Fitzgerald and Halliday to do a study in our town center. They talked to hundreds of residents. They had numerous focus groups with residents, and they came up with a plan for the town that was approved by the residents of the town. And that plan called for revitalizing the Four Corners area, putting in a streetscape, putting in lights, bike racks, Still River Greenway, mixed-use development, commercial on the first floor, apartments on the second and third floors, a supermarket, a community center. There were a lot of things they look for in that plan, and we are following that plan because it is the plan that was approved by the residents of this town. Most people I speak to like the work that's being done in the Four Corners. If you remember, 6 years ago, there hadn't been a lick of paint put in the Four Corners in over 60 years. It was a mess. It's not perfect yet, but it is getting there. So Sue Slater and I have done a lot of work over the years since we took office. We've improved the finances of the town. We've improved the civility between the boards. We worked very, very hard with each of the boards to make sure that everybody is doing the right thing. We completely revamped all of the zoning rules, first time in 60 years, and we're very happy to represent Brookfield and to work for you, and I thank you for the time.
First question, what will the Brookfield Town Center look like 5 years from now? Mr. Monteiro, 2 minutes.
Mike good? Mike's good? Cool. Well, like we talked about before, Scott, I think a lot of people in town are not happy with the Brookfield Town Center. I am one of those. I've spoken to many people not happy with it. I am not anti-growing. I am pro-growth, but I think it needs to be done the right way. I think the plan from the initial starting point was poorly run. I would not have centered this around the gas stations. For lack of better terminology, that area of town is contaminated, right? The ground in there, it's not healthy. It's not the best place to start a revitalization project. I would think we need to focus on a few things there, building out, and Steve just brought up the supermarket. I read the article last week. I mean, when is that going to be done? It looks like it's going to be another few years before anything moves there. I think we need to move things along faster, and we need to focus on bringing businesses to the Four Corners that people want to go to. We can't have our residents driving to New Milford and Danbury and Ridgefield and Newtown to go out to eat. We need people to be activity-based destination locations, whether it's a gym, more restaurants. What we have there now, I see, is 2 pizza shops and a Subway and 4 gas stations. To me, that's nothing too exciting. So I think a much better job could have been done. If I'm elected, I will work hard with my real estate background to finish this job the right way, push the state when it needs to be pushed, push the builders when they need to be pushed to get things done, and not have 2 heaps of sand sitting over there on the Four Corners for over a year now. And I know, according to the article in the News Times last week, it's going to be some more time before that's changed. So that's where I stand on that.
Mr. Dunn, 2 minutes.
Yeah, they're having concerns with the Four Corners and the development. I understand that. But one, these are private properties. You cannot tell a developer how to develop and where to develop and when to develop. What we can do, and we have done, is establish zoning laws that require them to meet the requirements of our town and our residents. Does construction go slower than we want? Yes, it does sometimes. It does. There's nothing you can do about that. I'm sorry, you can't. You cannot force a developer, I don't care how persuasive you are, to develop. The plan we're following is the one that was set up 12 years ago, and we're being very careful about it. For the streetscapes, most people don't realize this, but our latest phase will be paid for 94% with grants. The last 2 before that, over 80% of them will be paid for with grants. Overall, we're at about 76% of the streetscapes are being paid for with grants. The Still River Greenway, which we built, is the second most popular trail in Connecticut. It brings people to our downtown. And it's a chicken or the egg kind of issue. We are bringing the chicken and we are bringing the egg. We will get there. I talked to a developer today who is making an offer on a property and is going to put in 130 market rate units, what he called upscale, meaning higher granite, all the nice amenities that people want, a pool, things like that. Regarding the gas stations, I think everyone agrees that the gas stations are not something that we want there. We tried to buy the BP gas station when it was closed. BP would not talk to us. The remediation of all those gas stations has been completed. Each of those gas stations has completely done all they need to remediate the gas that leaked from their tanks in the past. Over time, I think the value of those buildings will grow and we will be able to move them into another function. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Carr, 2 minutes.
Can I chime in real quick? That is not starting until 2023.
No, not how it works.
Well, that's not starting until 2023 if pending state approval, which means 2025. So,
Mrs. Carr, 2
All right.
minutes.
So So just back to the question was, what will the town center district look like in 5 years from now? And obviously, depending on who gets elected, there will be very, very different answers and very, very different vision. Not too long ago, maybe 4 minutes ago, Mr. Dunn spoke to the fact that the town center is not perfect. And the people I'm talking to would absolutely agree with you, Mr. Dunn, 100%. It has been a complete and utter mess. Missed opportunity, time and time again. I don't care if these plans were laid 12 years ago or 6 years ago. You've had 6 years of involvement, Mr. Dunn, and it has been a disaster. You ask 10 different people on your staff what is happening down there, you're going to get 10 very disjointed answers. Nobody knows the answer. You talk about streetscape, you talk about the phases of this, that, and the other thing, you talk about future development, you talk about, let's not avoid the elephant in the room, 8-30G, which I oppose tremendously. I just want to make that very clear up front. There is far too much affordable housing going on down there, and there should be no development for the sake of development. People were promised a nice downtown area. They have not gotten that, and again, it's turned out to be a mess. It's not a destination of choice. People don't want to pump gas after dark. I oppose the incentivized housing through and through. I will curb development. Enough is enough. And since Steve Dunn has been in office, I also want to hit home on the fact that there's been a 44% increase in affordable housing, according to the Connecticut State website. And I would like to see more of incentivized housing for our senior citizens versus all other forms of affordable housing. Quite frankly, if a family wants to downsize, such as yourself, Mr. Dunn, who's been here for decades, you really have no options to move anywhere in Brookfield to downsize, unless you want to pay $450,000 for a 2-bedroom condo in Newberry Village.
Mr. Monteiro, 1 minute of rebuttal.
With what Ms. Carr was saying, I am not against low-income housing at all. I think it's a very expensive to live here, especially coming from the younger perspective. I have 3 brothers who are in their mid-20s. It's a very expensive town. The average rent for a 1-bedroom house, 1-bedroom apartment is $1,602 in Brookfield, Connecticut. To me, that's crazy. So I'm not against low-income housing. I think it needs to be put in the proper place. And I think we need to, at times, help our community out who are struggling financially and who need help to get going. For the younger person in Brookfield, there is not much opportunity. I want to help bring some more opportunity here for the under 30 crowd. They all leave to Texas, to California, to Colorado. Basically, all of my friends are left. It's not here. The cost of living is not good here. So low-income housing is not off the table for me. It needs to be in the right spot. And like Ms. Carr said, I agree. The town was sold a bag of damaged goods. They expected a mini Richfield, a mini Newtown, a mini Bethel downtown for what the streetscape has been planned. Thank you.
Mr. Dunn, 1 minute.
Yeah, when we took office, there were 2 developments, Brookfield Village and Laurel Hill, that were 100% affordable. Laurel Hill used the loophole in federal law to move their affordable from a 20% affordable to 100% affordable. Those were done before we took office. We immediately, when we took office, we are one of 6 towns in Connecticut that has an affordable moratorium against 830G. Now, I'm not against affordable housing, but I am against 830G because 830G allows any developer to come into your town, and one did, trying to build a 6-story building in our downtown, and we couldn't stop him. I called him in my office. I said to him, here's the deal. You can build a 6-story building, but it's going to take you 7 years. I'm going to take you to court. My residents will give me the money to take you to court, and we can 7 years from now, you can build it. And you know what? The residents will give me the money. So we got an affordable moratorium, which just allows us to build affordable according to our rules.
Mrs. Carr, 1 minute.
Yeah, I just want to touch on according to our rules. Mr. Dunn, time and time again, you and your Democratic Town Committee have backed your party out of Hartford, and your party is about to grab up our zoning laws. So once that happens, sir, all bets are off. There will be no more local zoning laws. So how are you going to address it at that point? The fact that you're avoiding the 830G issue is unacceptable, and Brookfield deserves better. This is not a build it and they will come. Not to mention the uptick in response to our town center district in light of the overdevelopment and all the apartment buildings we have going in there, not to mention the ones that are forthcoming.
Scott Benjamin, moderator for the Brookfield Chamber of Commerce debate. What will be your response to the ongoing pandemic? Mr. Dunn, 2 minutes.
Well, we've been addressing this pandemic for the last 18 months. We've worked very hard to keep our residents safe. We were one of the first towns to start a vaccination clinic. We vaccinated over 10,000 people. 100 people, a little over 100 people, volunteered to work in those clinics. We will continue to have those clinics when it becomes available for ages 5 to 17. We have worked very hard with the state and with our director of health here in town, Raymond Sullivan, to do the things we need to keep our town safe. And sometimes that means making tough decisions. So recently we enacted a mask mandate for businesses in town. Did we want to do that? No. But does the safety and health of our children and our families trump difficulty people have wearing masks? I think the answer to that is yes. We are going to lift that mandate when the case rate falls below 10 and when the positivity rate falls below 3%. Last week, it did fall below 10, but the positivity rate was still high. So we're going to look at that on a weekly basis. I think we have done an incredible job garnering resources. We've gotten 14 different grants to address the pandemic, and that does not include the ARPA money that was just given. All of the vaccination clinics, all of the work we've done for this town has been paid for with grants, and we think we've done a really good job. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Carr, 2 minutes.
So, Mr. Dunn likes to pride himself on his list of over 100 accomplishments that I have right here. If you have not taken the time to look at this on the Slater Dunn website, I really encourage you to do it. It's laughable. He prides himself on these 100 accomplishments, but really when you narrow it down, there's so many redundancies that it's about 80 items. So I just want to hit home on the fact that over a 6-year period, he really has only accomplished about 14 items per year, which you can average to about 1 item per month. I want to know why you haven't been doing your job, Mr. Dunn. Some of these things you're taking credit for, to include leadership during COVID, has been opportunistic. It just so happens to be you in the seat. And I'm sorry that you've had to be the one to have to deal with this unprecedented time. It's been a very, very tricky time for all of us. And I totally can sympathize with you when you say you're having to make decisions that are tough. But when you talk about the safety and health of our children, Mr. Dunn, just as a reminder, since COVID started in Connecticut, from ages 0, day 0 to age 9, there's been 1 death in Connecticut of over 70,000 reported cases. And from ages 10 to 19, sir, there's been 4 deaths in the state of Connecticut. How is masking our town, our children, in your arbitrary decision-making process protecting the safety of our townspeople? As for the ARPA money, that's a really interesting fact, and I'd like to spend more time on that hopefully later, but apparently there's a $5 million benefit that our town is supposed to receive. People have suffered during COVID, and Mr. Dunn is holding $2.5 million today. That should be going to you, the townspeople of Brookfield, not holding it in the bank, waiting till it's paid out in 2024.
Mr. Monteiro, 2 minutes.
This is on, right? I agree with that money situation for the American Rescue Plan, and I think we can utilize that really well in regards to public health. I also agree with Mrs. Carr about Mr. Dunn's position on it being really hard to be the leader during this time of COVID. Obviously, it's a tough situation. Obviously, it's new. Nobody's ever dealt with it before. I think there's a much bigger health-related problem in this country that is not being addressed. The government has spent $10 trillion and not spent 1 penny on the real problem, which is obesity and mental health anxiety when it comes to COVID and when it comes to our lifestyle. My background, I've spent the last 15 to 20 years bringing that to Fairfield County. I started the 2nd CrossFit gym in Fairfield County. My mission since 2007 has been to make people fitter, healthier, and to increase their human performance and lifestyle, and that is what we need to focus on moving forward. Another pandemic will come. Hopefully it's not worse. We need to build up our immune systems, build up our health, and Focus on the real health problem. I don't think giving out a donut and beer at a vaccine clinic is a good incentive. I mean, what are we doing? Is that the incentive we want to use to inject people with the vaccine, but then give them a donut and a beer on the side? It's kind of counterproductive in my mind. And I'd love to talk more about the rescue money going down the road here. When the town mask mandate went into place on October 12th, we were at 12.2 per 100,000. 6 weeks later, we were at 18.1 per 100,000. So if I'm elected, the mask mandate is still in place. That will come off as my first act as your first selectman.
Mr. Dunn, 1 minute.
Yeah, you look at all of these things, and our goal is to protect everyone. I don't think anyone would be comfortable going into surgery and their doctor and all the nurses in there were not wearing masks. There's a reason they wear masks. It protects you as a patient. That's well proven. And if we can save one life of one child by wearing masks. Now, masks are not 100% effective. Everyone agrees with that. But they are effective. They are effective in stopping the coronavirus from spreading to person. I believe that, and we're going to continue to have the mask mandate in place as long as we have to protect our residents and our children, because one death more is too many. Thank you.
Mrs. Carr, 1 minute.
So just to be clear, Mr. Dunn, even if Governor Lamont lifted the mask mandate for children in schools and you still decided to have a mask mandate in town, you would enforce those children to wear the masks in schools, even though the governor has lifted the mask mandate.
I have no control over that.
You have no control over that, but you have control over implementing mask mandates in our town. And,
Not in the schools. Sorry.
well, no, I'm saying if Governor Lamont were to lift the mask mandate, but you still wanted to implement a local municipal mask mandate as first selectman, those children would still have to wear the mask.
No.
No. So the children in school wouldn't have to wear the mask, but the townspeople would.
Can I make a point of order?
No, you'll get a Route 1.
Okay.
We
Okay.
have certain ground rules.
Sure.
Okay.
That's all I have.
You finish your comment?
That's all I have.
Mr. Monteiro, 1 minute.
Sure. So COVID was a terrible thing. I lost probably the two closest people in my life to COVID back in April 2020. I think it's the government's job to protect our rights and not place these restrictions on us. I find a town mask mandate with our numbers to be just over the top, and another example of an overreaching government. There was a great study came out of the Florida Health Department yesterday, so a non-political based group. They did a study in schools, children wearing masks, ages 5 to 17 versus the districts not wearing masks. The decrease was actually higher in the schools in cases, so a higher decrease, so less cases in schools without a mask mandate and with. And that was a massive study. And to Mrs. Carr's point, she did mention this earlier, since COVID started, January 1, 2020, in Connecticut, ages 0 to 17, 3 children have died from COVID. We don't want anybody to die, but what are we doing, right? We're overreacting to the situation. We're overreacting, and we're trading our liberty for a small sense of safety.
What will you do to improve police and library services? Mrs. Carr, 2 minutes.
So 6 years ago when Dunn Slater ran and campaigned, they promised at the same time that they would provide the town a new library, a new police department, and a new school. Here we are 6 years later, we're getting the school. Mr. Dunn brought the library to vote 3 times, once with the Board of Finance, once with the Board of Selectmen, and once for public citizens. It failed miserably, 2-1. He did not keep his finger on the pulse of what the townspeople wanted. Clearly, it was not the library. When I become the first selectman, I will absolutely put the police first and foremost. Our town is in desperate need of many things, and I'm not denying that we don't need a library. We do. But we've got to prioritize and prioritize smartly. Our police station was built in 1985. It's in disrepair. It doesn't have things that are adequate for what we need to operate in 2022, to include a lack of facilities for female officers, no places to have meetings. It's small. They need new technology in order to better communicate with our force out on the streets. And as we all know, there has been an uptick in response since overdevelopment has been happening. Let's not deny that. So I would absolutely prioritize the police station. And going back to Mr. Dunn's affiliation to Hartford through the Democratic Town Committee, and his Democratic Town Committee chair has actually publicly stated that she's in favor of defunding the police. And I would just ask again, Mr. Dunn, where do you stand on that issue? Because our townspeople deserve to know. And the last time I asked, you laughed at that.
Mr. Monteiro, 2 minutes.
Could you get one more question time with Scott with the question?
It's, how would you improve library and police services?
Sure. So I stand behind the police 100%. My grandfather was a Danbury police officer for many years. He led the union in Danbury. My uncle is a Danbury police officer. So I have family ties to the police officers. I respect them. They have a great job. I know a lot of the local police officers here. What I think we need to focus on is giving them more support, like Mrs. Carr said. I did a little research. Crime is up 24% since this administration took over. My car was stolen 6 weeks ago from my driveway. We need to form a task force with the neighboring towns that have formed this task force, Westport, Newtown, Monroe. There's a string of car thefts going on in Brookfield. And like I said, my car was stolen. We have a long driveway, taken out of the driveway 4 in the morning back late August. So we need to focus on that. I would also like to add back to the public health piece, a physical and mental training support program for our fire department and our police officers here in town. They do this in Danbury. It's a great program. It's a great way to de-stress and help them perform on their job better. Facility-wise, I would love to take a tour of the facility again and see what they really need. I've taken a tour of the fire department and a great tour with the chief and the president. They do an awesome job there. As far as the library goes, I don't see it as a pressing issue at this very moment. I know we're going to have some school choice issues coming up down the road, so I'd like to touch on that when we get to the school choice piece in regards to where the library may or may not go.
Mr. Dunn, 2 minutes.
Yeah, Sue and I have supported the police and our fire departments fully over the last 6 years. Every time the fire department or the police department has, either of the fire departments or the police department has come to the town with a request, we have agreed with that request and we have funded it. Be it a fireboat, be it a new fire truck, be it new ambulance. We're adding a third ambulance. We added a third ambulance and we're going to add another one. The police have asked us on a number of occasions for funds to do projects that they're working on. For example, we're just building a temporary, I call it a temporary shed, to house their scuba truck and some other very valuable equipment that was sitting outside and getting destroyed. I do not believe in defunding the police at all. Everyone has their own opinion, but I think most people in Brookfield feel the way I do. Defunding the police is not an answer to problems that have happened in cities. We don't have those problems here for the most part. We really don't. We are very, very concerned that our police and our fire get the support that they need. Remember, our fire department is completely voluntary. And when we took office, they were getting a $1,000 stipend against their taxes every year. Unfortunately, for those younger firefighters who only owned a car, they could get $200 off the full value of the taxes that they paid. That didn't seem fair to us. So we changed that stipend to $1,500 in cash for each of the firemen. We've negotiated reasonable, fair contracts with our police union. We have, I think, good support from them. They do a great job, and so does our fire department and EMS. I think we have supported our fire and police and EMS more than any administration before us. Thank you.
Mrs. Carr, 1 minute.
Well, thank you for that clarification, and it's refreshing and heartwarming to know that you actually do say you support the police, our first responders, our firefighters, our EMS, because they deserve a big, huge thank you, not only in this moment, but every day, each day for all that they do. They are the true heroes and the glue that keeps our town going. Regarding the prioritization of a library versus a police station, I just also want to bring to everyone's attention that there's a plethora of other issues that our town also needs as well. So with me as your first selectman, I will definitely work with my board of selectmen and our committees and all of our ad hoc committees to really collaborate on the needs of the town and what the people really truly want. I've got a laundry list of other items, and many people in town are unaware of what's really happening here.
Mr. Monteiro, 1 minute.
Sure, yeah. The defund the police thing is purely for political gain on both sides, right? They both play it up to gaslight and cause outrage. I don't believe Steve believes in defunding the police whatsoever. So with that being said, the crime rate has risen. We need to focus more on our police, give them more support. Again, the task force with the cars, I think, is a very important thing. Like I said, my car was stolen out of my driveway on one of the quietest streets in town. And just to focus on the police and give them the most support we can is something that I think is of utmost importance in a town like Brookfield. We want to keep it safe. We want to keep that smaller town, New England quaint town feel in a safe community is definitely a massive part of that.
Mr. Dunn, 1 minute.
Yeah, with regards to the library, I'm sorry I got tied up in the police a little bit too much in fire EMS. We said 6 years ago when we ran for office that we supported a new library. People in town have been talking about a new library facility almost since we built it, at least 30 years. And we're the only administration that ever brought the project of a library before the voters. Unfortunately, it got turned down. And I think the reason it got turned down is we were also building a new school, and people wanted to know how much that new school was going to cost them before they committed to spending $10 or $15 million on a new school or even a new police station. We now know what that's going to cost us. So we'll move ahead with both the additions to the police station. We just applied for a grant to expand it to build an emergency operations center and possibly a new police station. But there's a limit, unfortunately, to the amount of debt any one town can take on at any time without losing their ratings. Thank you.
This is the Brookfield Chamber of Commerce debate between the candidates for first selectman. Mr. Monteiro, 2 minutes on what you would do to help repave the roads over the next 2 years.
To help repave the roads, which roads exactly?
Any of the municipal roads.
Well, just like I said earlier, push people when they need to be pushed, right? We have to get the job done quicker. We have to move quicker to get our town modern. Besides roads, infrastructure here, we need the cell tower that was turned down by the Board of Selectmen, I think, back in July or August, over on Gray's Bridge. We need that. Heck, I haven't had cell phone service on my phone ever here. If I go on Federal Road, is it going to work in the new Amazon Fresh? I don't know. Does it work over there if there's an emergency? I don't know. So infrastructure besides roads, we need to focus on. The cell tower is something we need in Brookfield. The emergency services are behind that, and it's something we need to seriously get back on the docket. Their only response was they didn't like the terms for the town. I saw no renegotiation. From my background as a commercial real estate person, everything's a negotiation. We can negotiate that to get a better deal for the town and have more safety in emergency services. God forbid anything bad happens. And I would love to make a phone call on Federal Road for once in my life here.
Mr. Dunn, 2 minutes.
Yeah, on the roads, the town put in a policy, it was during the Davidson administration, that we needed to spend, in order to replace our roads every 10 years, we needed to spend about $1.5 million a year. And to catch up, they borrowed $10 million, and they spent the $10 million rebuilding the roads. When Sue and I took office, we were spending $350,000 a year in cash and $1,150,000 in borrowing to build our roads. We have since upped that. We are now spending $1,350,000 in cash and borrowing $150,000. And hopefully in next year's budget, we will pay cash 100% for the $1.5 million we need to repair each of our roads and keep them in great shape. If you ask anybody in surrounding towns who has the best roads, they're going to tell you Brookfield, because we do replace them every 10 years, and we do a fantastic job at it, and our guys do a great job. Thank you.
Mrs. Carr, 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's interesting. I actually had the pleasure of spending some time with Mayor Pete Bass in New Milford, and he would say his roads are the best, Mr. Dunn. I would look for efficiencies across the board, working together with Public Works and our Board of Finance to look for ways to save money. And I want to talk about how Mr. Dunn just said it's now costing $1 million every 10 years to redo our roads. That's interesting because right now, if we look at his rainy day fund, or the money that we have in reserve, it's over $1 million. That should be going back to the taxpayers of Brookfield. But that's been growing in this account, and during a time of COVID where people are struggling again and they need the money now, Mr. Dunn's priding himself for sitting on this money that's sitting out there And it belongs back in the pockets of our taxpayers, people who are struggling today, not down the road. And our taxes here in town have continued to go up and up and up. And if I become first selectman, when I become first selectman, I'm going to inherit another 4 years of a tax increase. So going back to the roads, you know, there's a lot of things that can be fixed, but again, it's the needs and how we're going to address it, and addressing it smartly with fiscal responsibility.
Mr. Monteiro, 1 minute.
Sure. Back to the tax issues. As part of my platform, I'm giving back $30,000 to the town of Brookfield, to the town treasury, that was given to the first selectman in this upcoming year's budget. I do not think the scope of this job is anywhere near the mayor of Danbury's job, and it's basically right now a $5,000 difference. With that being said, the road situation, the traffic is going to increase tremendously. I know a lot of residents in Brookfield are already upset about that, and it's going to increase tremendously down in that lower lower Federal Road area. We have Starbucks coming, Dairy Queen, Amazon Fresh, the new growing seeds, daycare next to Country Kids, which I think is interesting to say the least, how that was approved. So that is going to be another big problem that we're going to have to tackle here very shortly.
Mr. Dunn, 1 minute.
Yeah, on Lower Federal Road, we have been chasing the state and working with them directly with the commissioners since a week after I took office, when Devin McCaffrey, the owner of Chick-fil-A, came to me and said, Steve, I
So
want...
many issues here in town, and, you know, priding yourself on that Federal Road project is just one thing that, you know, among many. And it may alleviate the problem long term, but it's just going to accommodate the people you say are bringing COVID from out of town to our stores on Federal Road.
What is your position on increasing taxes during the next fiscal year? Mr. Dunn, 2 minutes.
Yeah, we're going to have the new school project coming up. We just financed another $38 million to pay for the second half of the school. When we originally envisioned this and put out a plan to the town residents as to what it would cost in taxes to each individual homeowners, we estimated we would get a 30-year bond and borrow for between 4% and 6% to pay for that school. Well, last year, we put out a 20-year bond, and we're paying 1.55% on that bond. This year, we went out for the second half, and we got another 20-year bond at 1.83%. We are going to save the town just by that bonding. And we get that bonding and that good rate because we have stellar financials. We have a good unassigned general fund balance. We have the strong liquidity that these rating agencies look for. We have the highest rating you can get, AAA from Standard & Poor's. So that will save us over $20 million alone just on the new school. And we'll be finished paying for it in 20 years. That shows that we do have strong financial management in town, that we look at these things. And so far, if you remember, if residents remember, we put out a report that showed what your increase would be in the average house in Brookfield over the next 10 years. We are now, 2 years in, well below what we estimated we would be at. And that's because we're saving money on all of those things, on the bonding and borrowing. We appreciate all the work that everyone's done, and my job is to be a manager. But I'll tell you, with a Lower Federal Road, I was in the commissioner's office myself 5 or 6 times pushing that project through. I do have project managers. They do great work, and we appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Carr, 2 minutes.
Can you repeat the question, please?
What is your position on increasing taxes during the next fiscal year?
My position on increasing taxes over the next fiscal year is that my hands are tied, because like I said earlier in this debate, our taxes are going to continue to go up, and they will go up for the next 4 years based off of this debt bubble that I'll be inheriting when I become the first selectman. We're still paying for the Brookfield High School project, while Brookfield also needs new projects, one of which is the boys' locker room project, with which Mr. Dunn has been unsuccessful in bringing to fruition. It's embarrassing when we host towns from away at our sporting events and we're using disgusting porta potties, we don't have a legitimate concession stand, and our boys' locker room is dilapidated, not to mention the bathrooms within the walls of the school. It's just unacceptable, and this refers back to the laundry list of other projects, not to forget the walls of Wisconsin School, which are falling apart, and That project has been up for bid for quite some time, and he hasn't moved the needle on that at all. We're still operating out of trailers in the back of that school. There's an Iroquois gas station that's 900 feet from the school, and they're about to quadruple their output. So what does that say for the environment and the safety of our students at Wiskaneer? But going back to his pride in having a AAA rating, in Fairfield County, it's always normal to have AA plus. So to go from AA plus to AAA is not moving the needle that far. And it just happens to be another area of opportunity for him where in this time interest rates are low. So he was able to secure low interest rates to save money elsewhere, which anybody in his position would do, especially with his very strong and stellar Republican Board of Finance at the helm.
Mr. Monteiro, 2 minutes.
Yeah, to touch on the dilapidated school, I train a few kids who go to that school. My girlfriend's daughter goes to that school. It is a mess. We need to focus on that right away. And increasing taxes never works. So we're inheriting a budget where it's going to be the case. It's another big government overreach that I am always against. It's never worked throughout history. And then when we want to talk about voter turnout, which I think is the biggest factor in this election, 14% of the town voted for the budget last year. It's not something I would praise with a 14% turnout for a budget. Nobody knows, and they don't know because they're not made aware, because there's no presence in this office right now. Danbury's been flat for 3 years. Newtown's been flat for 3 years. So a AAA rating, like Mrs. Carr was saying, is doing your job. That's what you're supposed to do in this seat. So no, I'm not for raising taxes.
Mr. Dunn, 1 minute.
Yeah, a lot of things combine to set up what the taxes will be. I've told you what the increase would be 3 years ago for this new school project. Every year we try to keep our taxes as low as possible. This year's increase was 1.52%. Remember that contractually, the schools have to pay their teachers. It's a union, and it's a union in the town. 90% of our employees are union employees. You have to sign a contract with them, and they get a raise. They get an increase. If you try to propose a 0% increase, you'll go to arbitration. And in arbitration, they pick one or the other. So if we went with a 0% increase for our unions and they picked a 5% increase, they would probably win because the arbitration board will give them some money. So we need to manage our tax rates as strictly and as tightly as we can. And I believe we have done that.
Mrs. Carr, 1 minute.
It's interesting you should say that. That speaks to you believing that you're fiscally responsible and you're saving tax money. But let's talk about the mill rate for 1 second, because that's up 10%, while 7 other neighboring towns didn't increase theirs specifically because within the last year, specifically because of hardships through COVID. And ours went up 10%, Mr. Dunn, here in Brookfield. The closest second was at 6% in New Fairfield. And this is all public knowledge, and you can do the math. It should not be hidden. It should be very transparent, and that's another area where you tend to operate in a vacuum, not letting your taxpayers know where every single penny of their money is being spent.
Mr. Monteiro, 1 minute.
Yeah, I agree. The mill rate's gone up. In 2015, it was 26.4. This year, in 2021, it's going to be 30.4. It's a high mill rate for Brookfield. This budget this year is up 4.65% during a pandemic. And again, every town official in this town, as people are losing their jobs and their businesses are closing, every town official is getting a raise. I find that to be ridiculous. Again, why I'm giving back $30,000, if elected by the townspeople, to the town treasury. That is not appropriate spending from a first selectman, in my opinion. With the school piece, I understand school budget needs to increase. I support the kids greatly. I support these public schools in Brookfield greatly. The kids now are still paying for a parking pass at the high school. That's something that needs to be addressed. And again, Wiskaneer, it's the walls and the floor, and it's cold in there, and the kids are not having an enjoyable experience in that school. And I know that personally from working with a lot of these kids in a one-on-one setting. That's it.
Should the Still River Greenway be expanded? Mrs. Carr, 2 minutes.
Absolutely. I do, I am a proponent of that. I think it's in the benefit of our town to continue to expand the Still River Greenway. Absolutely. It promotes wellness, outdoor time, family time. It's a venue for our townspeople to get outdoors and exercise and all those things that we all know we should be doing and are healthy for our lifestyles. Having said that, we need to proceed with caution and make very smart decisions. My understanding is that the plan has been stalled because there is no concrete way to move forward. And as we talk, circling back to streetscape and the phases of the town center district and what's going to look like what, and it's just this hodgepodge of all these good idea fairies coming together. And it's very concerning because right now we don't really have a path to kind of navigate our way to take it north to New Milford or tying it back to Danbury. There's all kinds of easement issues. Setting these plans are not easy, I will say that, and having your committees do the laborious work is always a challenge, and things take time. I understand that. There's red tape along the way. However, we do need to hear from the townspeople on these issues. Again, these aren't decisions that should be made in a vacuum. Mr. Dunn tends to not use his Board of Selectmen sometimes, so who knows how decisions are being made, really. And that he should be talking to the homeowners along some of those easements. There are some concerns where perhaps the path should not run behind some of the housing areas that are down there. Not to mention the fact that we're crossing back and forth across Federal Road, which can be a major safety concern.
Mr. Monteiro, 2 minutes.
Yes, so I'm going to be your public health candidate. It's my #1 mission in life to bring public health to this country, to this community, and to make people and help people live the healthiest life, the longest life, the most productive life possible. The healthier we are as individuals, the better we can do for society and for community. If we don't have our health, as the saying goes, we have nothing. So I love the Greenway, but again, like Mrs. Carr said, the numbers have to be right, the town has to be on board. A lot of these decisions in a town like Brookfield should be community-based decisions. Speaking of green, I would love to talk about the marijuana dispensary topic that's coming up. I think that's a big thing in Connecticut now, and that's something that I think has a lot of pros and cons, and it's not something also that needs to be a community decision, and I hope we get to talk more about that here in the near future.
Mr. Dunn, 2 minutes.
Yes, recently we were made aware of a grant that's being issued by the federal government through the WestCog organization, which is the Western Council of Governments. It's all the towns in Fairfield County. And we were made aware of a grant that would be regional in nature. And so I got together with Pete Bass, the mayor of New Milford, and Joe Cavo, the mayor of Danbury, and we agreed as a team, all 3 towns, to submit a tri-town application for a design of the extension of the Still River Greenway into New Milford and into Danbury. The overall goal of the greenways in Connecticut is to connect almost every town to every other town if we could. The one that we're on, they wanted to go up through to Vermont. It's incredibly popular. People love it. They walk on it, they run on it, they bike on it, they take their dogs on it. And so we have applied for a $250,000 grant to actually do that design. We do have a committee in town, the Still River Committee, that has been working very diligently to try to find a way to stay along the river, right through the downtown. It's very hard to do. There are condos there behind the auto upholstery place that are literally sitting on the river. You can't put the greenway there. There's no space to put it. So this design will help us figure out a way to get it through our town center safely so people can still enjoy the Still River Greenway and go up to New Milford or down to Danbury.
Mrs. Carr, 1 minute.
Yeah, again, how to move forward on some of these ideas, it's just a mess right now. You know, the Greenway was the bright spot of our town until Dunn and the Democratic-controlled land use boards decided to level all the trees there and build a supermarket, which is going to also have 8-30G on top of it. But circling back to the Greenway itself and the expansion, we're also looking at the issue of blight, which we haven't talked about tonight. And there's 40 properties that Steve Dunn has had 6 years to fix He says the blight law is working, and each property gets 3 bites of the apple. So I'm not sure what he's been doing for 6 years, but I don't think that a beautiful greenway expansion deserves to be butted up against the situation of the blight in our town center district area.
Mr. Monteiro, 1 minute.
Yeah, to bring it back to the Greenway, again, I'm all for public health. I love the Greenway. I think it's a great aspect of Brookfield. And again, the numbers have to be right. The community has to be on board to want to increase that. And I love working with the local towns. I know Joe Calvo well. I know Dean Esposito well. I know Roberto Alves well. I know Pete Bass. So I'll be able to work with every local mayor, and we have to have close community ties with these different towns and their different leaders. Blight issue is still there. I mean, I watched the 2017 debate talking about that then. I made a video in front of the one house up there at the end of Four Corners last week with the roof off. I'm sure you've seen it. There's a homeless man who lives in there and some other shenanigans that go on in there. So we need to fix that once and for all. I really don't know what the big issue is there and why we can't resolve that once and for all. Good.
Mr. Dunn, 1 minute.
Yeah, I know we've gotten a little far afield from the Greenway, but when we took office, our blight rules were ineffective. The only thing that you could use to effect a change in a property were health and safety, meaning that if somebody was violating a health or safety rule, we could tell them to fix it. That clearly didn't work. So we put in new blight laws, and it takes a little while to do it. You have to go through town meetings, ordinances, have to do a lot of different things. And that new ordinance says one thing: if you're lowering the value of your neighbor's property, that can be considered blight. And we immediately started going after properties. We've had over 40 properties brought before the blight panel, and we have condemned 2 properties and ordered them demolished. One is the one in front of the bowling alley, which has the tree that fell through it, and one is 20 Station Road. We are going to continue to fight blight. We're not going to stop, and we will get it done.
Should Brookfield have a skate park? Mr. Monteiro, 2 minutes.
Again, I think that's a health thing, so I'm all for it. Again, if the numbers are right, I've been following them on Facebook for the last, year and a half so. So yeah, I love it. I also think we need to look at adding a potential Little League field here in Brookfield. I train a lot of the younger baseball players, and I know that's a need as well. So I would also like to include some sort of outdoor workout space, again, to create public health, and that can be part of the Greenway. If you go to many other states, they have these little stations every mile or so. You do a little mile walk or run in a Greenway. You get a station, you can do sit-ups, pull-ups, what have you. I think that would be a cheap other way to affect public health here positively.
Mr. Dunn, 2 minutes.
Yeah, I'm in favor of skate park. It would be a little difficult to put it at the Greenway because it's mostly wetlands, and it's very hard to build on wetlands. I'm in favor. We don't have enough facilities for our children in town, especially for those between 10 and 17 years of age. We don't. We need more. We need a community center. We're looking at Center School as a possible new location for a new library, and Parks and Rec, and make it a community center. Let kids use the gyms. There are a lot of things we could do there. It takes money, but I think we can do it. So I am much in favor of a skate park, and much like when my wife and I did the track restoration over at the high school, we have a ground-based, community-based group of people who are pushing this forward. And I encourage them and I support them.
Mrs. Carr, 2 minutes.
Maybe we can come up for a grant for a skate park since they exist for everything else. Going back to that $250 grant for the Greenway expansion, thank goodness for that, because you were very quick to spend $300,000, Mr. Dunn, putting to get an estimate on how much it would really cost to put underground wires in the town center district. So again, thank goodness for all these grants. So I'm not opposed to a skate park. Again, I would definitely prioritize all of our needs and work out the metrics to determine which comes first. And that's based off of what the townspeople want. Going back to the new Candlewood School, former Huckleberry, they demolished 2 baseball fields there that we're not getting back. We are in desperate need, to Mr. Dunn's point, for more athletic fields and things for our children. Bringing it back to the library, there was at one point, Mr. Dunn, where you supported putting the library on top of the soccer fields right here at the town hall. which would have eliminated another field for our children. So when we make these decisions, we can't just say, oh, a skate park sounds wonderful. It does sound wonderful, but there are, again, other needs, and we have to make very, very smart, calculated decisions because we're not made of money and we have a huge debt bubble.
Mr. Monteiro, 1 minute.
Sure, we definitely have to make smart decisions. We can't lead with emotion. If anybody here follows Little League Baseball in town, there's been some recent events. We'll stay involved with the coach on the 12U team. I'll let you guys do research on that. As far as the community funds, I agree with Mr. Dunn. Children here need some more activities to do. I know when I was a kid, we're always outside riding bikes, playing sports, doing all of that. I don't think center school is the place for that. We've had a 10% drop in child population here with the last census that came out back in August. I would like to use the American Rescue Plan's funds to potentially build a new public health center that would house all of this. The Parks and Rec would run it, or the Public Health Department of Brookfield could help run it, or could hire somebody outside to help run it. But this would be a place for the kids, for the police, for the fire department, for town residents to go and use. It's fitness, it's cryotherapy, it's sauna, it's real health and wellness to, again, bring our public health into the 21st century. Thank you.
Mr. Dunn, 1 minute.
Yes, just to correct one thing, we didn't spend a penny on searching out what the cost would be for putting wires underground in the town center. I still think it's a good idea. We discussed it with Eversource, and they came in for free and said it would cost about $16 million. We then decided, I'm sorry, that's way too much money. We didn't spend a penny on that. The ARPA funds that we have, you have to be very careful. You can only do infrastructure with the ARPA funds, meaning build anything in water, sewer, or broadband. You can't build buildings with it. It's for community resiliency and growth in the community. I'd love to be able to use that money for some infrastructure projects, but you're just not allowed to. The rules don't allow you. I can't change that.
We could use a building now, right, though? It's because for public health.
I don't think we're allowed to have that
Yeah,
discussion.
but we can use a building now. Okay.
So that's where I stand on the skateboard. Thank you.
Mrs. Carr, 1 minute.
I think we're still talking about whether or not there should be a skate park, but I'm going to bring it to lack of transparency because I'm not so sure what Mr. Dunn just said is accurate. He's saying that he spent $0 investigating what the cost would be to put those wires underground at the town center district. And this leads back to what I believe has been a lack of transparency in his administration. In previous debates, Mr. Dunn has prided himself on not having any FOI complaints. And I'm wondering if this still holds true, Mr. Dunn. Have you had any FOI complaints? Furthermore, is there a line item in your budget to put money back in the taxpayers' pockets because our taxpayers have been overtaxed by millions? So when things like this are happening, how are we going to afford a skate park?
Closing statements, Mr. Dunn, 3 minutes.
Yep. Thank you very much. Do that. The same thing on the town side. I have the most complete open budget of any administration in this town. It's over 600 pages long. It goes down to markers, right? How much we're going to spend on markers in a given department. So you can look at that budget, it's online, and you can call me, ask me a question. Hey, what's this for? What's that for? We have done a really good job in managing the finances of the town. We have gotten our pension to be 123% funded, the first time it's gone over 100% in the history of the town. Our OPEB obligation has gone down from $20 million to about $7 million now. We saved the town $7 million the first year we were in office when the state came and made claim on us for the high school project for $7 million in undocumented expenses. We got that down to zero. That saved the town $7 million. So I would stand on the record that we have. Remember, our Board of Finance is Republican controlled, but they don't behave that way. We need to be civil. We need to work together. They do what's best for this town, and so do Sue and I and Harry Shaker. Thank you very much.
Mr. Monteiro, 3 minutes.
Thank you, Brookfield, for watching tonight. We really appreciate it. Transparency and authenticity. Tonight in the parking lot, I spoke to 2 residents pulled up to me as I was walking in, complaining that they were not able to be here tonight. That is a big problem. This kind of shenanigans will not happen under my term. These are the questions I asked myself after tonight. Where do we want to go? Do we want to continue moving left? Do we want to move right? Or do we want to move forward together as a town, Brookfield? What's the best for Brookfield? How do we best prepare for the future? Do we want a town executive tied to a party at this point in time? That's a serious question I hope everybody asks themselves. Is there a better way? I say, yes, there is. I look at this as we have three choices coming November 2nd. One, do we want to make Brookfield 1988 again, like the Republican nominee and the Brookfield Republican Town Committee? Two, do we want to continue with a complacent, big corporate, overreaching government? We've had a great example of that here tonight, the way the DTC and Mr. Dunn wants to continue with. They don't want you to be aware. They don't want you to hear my voice or yours, and I think this is all on purpose. Or we have another choice. Do we move forward with a more centric, open-minded, hungry, unaffiliated first selectman, not tied to these clear tribal alliances, a first selectman with real-world business and community-building experience that will lead us into the future? These are our choices in front of us. My goal since day one of this campaign has been to increase voter turnout and awareness in Brookfield for this upcoming election. In 2019, only 33% of Brookfield turned out to vote. Only 14.4% this past May turned out for this so-called great budget. We need we the people of Brookfield, to have a real say in who they elect to represent them as their first selectman. I am here to offer Brookfield another choice, a choice for real change, a choice not tied to these traditional alliances, a choice that brings common sense, not backed by any political handlers telling me what to say, what not to say, or any moneyed interests. I'm giving back $30,000 to the town treasury from the raise upcoming for this first selectman during a pandemic. We need new leadership in Brookfield that doesn't follow the mob. We need leadership that is self-aware, strong, open-minded, and willing to center the conversation. Thank you all for watching, and I just have one thing to ask you. I haven't asked anybody in town for a single penny. All I ask is when you go and vote November 2nd, you have an open mind and an open heart, and it doesn't matter if there's an R, a D, or an I next to that person's name. Your friend is not in that booth with you. I ask you to please vote who you think is best to be your next first selectman. I thank you all, and as the old saying goes, my door is always open. Please feel free to reach out. Email, text, Facebook. My headquarters is at 616 Federal, and I'm always open for comments or concerns. Thank you, Brookfield.
Mrs. Carr, 3 minutes.
Thank you. So first of all, I just want to publicly thank Mr. Dunn for holding public office and for all that you do every day for our town. It is a very big responsibility, and that does not go unrecognized. To Mr. Monteiro, I find it really interesting that not too far in the distant past, you were excited to be running alongside of Tara Carr, which you say right here in your bio. When,
Yeah, she wants me as her campaign manager.
when
Believe
you
that?
were on the Republican, vying right here in this very room for a nomination from the Republican.
Their party's a little messy, we'll say that.
Okay, can I speak, please? Because I was actually going to commend you on your
Thank you.
efforts to running alone.
Thank you.
But now I'm not so sure
Appreciate
I'm
it.
going to do that. So good luck to you. We've highlighted some very concerning issues tonight, and as I've said, there's a very long laundry list of many other issues in town. I wish that you could see our three resumes side by side. Mr. Monteiro prides himself on thinking that running a town is akin to running a gym. I will tell you that it is not. I've
it
been
is.
on garrison commands across installations across the globe, which house tens of thousands of people. In fact, my husband was the chief of police on many of those installations. So I understand what it's like to run a town. I have not run a town, but I know what it's like and what it takes. And perhaps you're thinking Mr. Dunn has done okay over the last 6 years, but really, is okay good enough for our town? More of just okay means less transparency and even less communication. You know, I asked earlier, has he been able to move the needle at all on Brookfield? Again, going back to the downtown area, can we take a look there and think to ourselves, wow, this is beautiful? Mr. Dunn will likely give the excuse that it's a long-range plan, which we heard earlier, and he should be elected to see it through. But really, is this the Brookfield we want? Do we want a mini Waterbury right here in our own backyard? With me as your first selectman, there will be no more overdevelopment, and I can promise you this. Decisions made by myself and with my two selectmen. I'll be communicating regularly with both of them using our town charter according to the law. My vision for our town doesn't involve massive expansion and low rent housing, but instead disciplined growth that offers our citizens a return on our investment rather than tax breaks for the developers who come sweeping through here. I also think that our local government should be forthcoming, I've said this, and that you, the taxpayers, are the ones with whom we're elected to serve, should not be ever shunned or ridiculed or walked out upon or humiliated when you try to engage in political debate or discourse. The right to assemble and the free and open debate that goes along with all of that are the underpinnings of our rights in this country, and they should never be suppressed. Ultimately, the first selectman should be communicating with you constantly, not just every 2 years at election time or at monthly coffees. As both a candidate and concerned citizen, I want to thank you, and I look forward to earning your vote and making Brookfield better. Thank you.
Thanks to the candidates, producer Dan Secor, and the Brookfield Chamber of Commerce. Please be sure to vote November 2nd. I'm Scott Benjamin. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.